Yeah. I've got to have something.
Silly goose. Minute Tim's flagship episode 324. I'm your host on this audio-only episode, and I am joined by Stephen.
What's happening? Yeah, good, thanks.
You?
Cold as all hell. Chain drinking teas just to warm myself up in this bleak hellscape we now live in Britain. Yeah, a wee bit of annual leave for Melly just now as we face the World Cup downtime for Celtic stuff. But there's simply so much happening right now in the world of Celtic. We simply had to furnish our listeners with a flagship episode.
We definitely did. Melly's left us the key to the studio, so what comes out at the end of this hour could be, because I know when we're left our own devices, Stephen, topics wildly vary, but we need to remind ourselves that this isn't a Patreon episode, because you and I quite often do Patreon episodes
yes
by ourselves. This is a flagship podcast, and the listeners are tuning in for Celtic news, Celtic opinion. We can't vary wildly off, but if you would like extra Celtic podcasts and extra Celtic opinion and extra podcasts and content from us, and you'd like to support what we do, head on over to patreon.com/20minutetims, where we will furnish you with extra podcasts, extra videos, writing, all sorts of great stuff. Patreon.com/20minutetims. Now that's the plug out the way, Stephen.
Yeah,
we need to get down to the brass tacks of talking about why Peter Lawwell was back in the club. We need what is we could have taken the week off, but Peter's he's burst back in the door. Now we need to talk about it. My overwhelming reaction to this is, well, it's twofold. I've got two reactions, if you can have such a thing, right? But the first one is, why Celtic? Why?
Yeah.
Why bother? Why have you done this? Why have you done this to us? But sort of like, why have you done it to yourself? Why have you brought this inevitable grief on yourself? And there's a fraction of me also thinking, like, is that a bit panto baddie? Is that what we're doing here? We've decided Peter Lawwell's the bad guy and he's not really going to be involved in the day-to-day stuff. But then the other side of him is like, well, that was always the challenge with Peter Lawwell as far as understood it. You know, things he wasn't involved in, he would get himself involved in. And so he's the outstanding candidate. As Dermot Desmond put it, Ange is happy to have him back. Peter's delighted to be back. Everyone inside Celtic. But overall, I'm just like, I don't know why Celtic have went down this path. The club for a long time has struggled with new ideas, with fresh brains and fresh thinking within the club. And I really was hoping to see some more of that. And it just seems like we've sort of wound the clock back a wee bit. Celtic like to do that, don't they?
Yeah, sure do. The year 2022, Peter Lawwell and Avatar, the sequels no one asked for, but we're getting anyway. Two expensive sequels that absolutely no one cares about or asked for, but we're getting them anyway. Look, Peter Lawwell, I'm going to try and be as balanced as possible about this because it deserves to be spoken about. Now, anyone who's probably on at least nodding terms with what we've said about the running of the club for the past 2+ years about the various goings on behind the scenes with the board and the major shareholder and all that, right? So anyone in nodding terms with any of that will probably guess the conclusion I'm going to inevitably reach anyway, but I'm going to try and be as balanced as possible about it. On one hand, right, on the positive side of the ledger, when you're looking at Peter Lawwell, and fittingly, he has an accountancy background, so we're going to do it as far as a ledger goes. That's where my knowledge of accountancy begins and ends, right enough, right? But on the positive side, right, Peter Lawwell was, and probably still remains, an influential, powerful and well-connected figure, not only in Scottish football, but in broader European terms as well. So in that regard, he is probably a useful guy to have in that ambassadorial, slightly probably ceremonial role at Celtic, right? It should be slightly more hands-off, but we'll get to that, right? So that is in the positive side of it. He brings a great deal of experience when it comes to running the club, right? So he's been over the course, he has been very, very successful. Regardless of what you and I and many people listening to this will think of him, there was a hugely successful period that he saw oversaw with Celtic, right? However, if you didn't see the big however coming, right, the name alone is just too evocative. It's just too emotive.
Is it toxic?
A name.
Is the brand toxic? Is that what you're going to say? Is the Lawwell brand toxic?
It's just too toxic, right? That's a good word for it, for the Celtic fans to stomach. It really is. And I'm not talking for everyone. There will be large swathes of people, millions of people listening to this right now, who either, one, don't care at all that Peter Lawwell's back, or, let's face it, there will be a fringe out there who think it's a really positive, it's a great thing that Peter Lawwell's back, right? So I'm not speaking for everyone, but I mean broadly, I mean largely across the fan base. I don't think it's out of order to suggest that a lot of people aren't particularly happy with it. So I don't know why it's worth it to the club to just dredge up all that old ill feeling towards that certain name, because I think it's inevitable as well. This will happen. There are no limits to the extent to which we will blame Peter Lawwell for anything that goes wrong at this club now. This is what Celtic are setting them up for. The second a contract negotiation falls through, the second we don't get a transfer target, all the way up to and including dropping points, the name Peter Lawwell is going to be front and centre of the blame getting thrown around. So
I suppose Celtic would say, right, but if you're going to die and get involved in conspiracy theories and nonsense, it's not really our fault. If you're going to be on there on the internet and on your podcasts and on your blogs, just making up stuff to hate the guy. This is Celtic's point of view. That we can't really, as a professional organisation and as a big football club, conduct business. We can't hire this fantastic candidate because he's got a really bad reputation amongst the fans on Twitter. Like, you can't really have that. But at the same time, part of me's like, well, see all the stuff that you said he's good at. Peter Lawwell's CV is completely different to any other guy that's sort of held this role, this sort of ceremonial role within the club. I think the roles might have changed slightly, but it's completely different. And the stuff that people are saying, well, he's got great connections within European football and great connections within Scottish football and yada yada. Right, okay. But that's Michael Nicholson's job now. And Peter Lawwell should have done some sort of handover to Michael Nicholson to get him in the room with these guys and make sure he's attending the right meetings and knowing people and how to network with these. I'm very broad strokes, but I just feel like he should have passed all that on. And now we've got this new role. And I'm thinking, if he's the outstanding candidate, well, what was the criteria? Because if it's just like he worked at the club before and he knows the club and he knows the city, and it's never made particularly clear. And the sort of Lawwell dynasty, because his son's there, the Dermot Desmond dynasty because his son's there at the club as well. I'm like, I wanted to break free from this a wee bit. And I mean, Peter Lawwell's going to be there longer than Ange Postecoglou. That's a fact now. Right?
What an unpleasant sentence. Though factually accurate, what an unpleasant sentence that is.
That's just a fact. And we kind of thought we were travelling one direction with Ange. Yeah. And then all this talk of continuity and all that comes, and it was Ange that said, well, continuity is important, right? But where's the continuity from you, Ange? Because that's what I'm more concerned about. Because, I mean, continuity, first of all, why is that a good thing? Ange, I really disagree with Ange, but for him to say, it's important continuity, why is that a good thing? You don't have to look at Celtic, look at Man U. They've had continuity for a long time, not been doing particularly well off the back of it. No. Loads of clubs have bad continuity. Continuity doesn't just equal good. And sometimes a change is good. And at the end of the day, that's why Peter Lawwell stepped down when he did. In fact, he had to step down, kind of let everyone know he was stepping down, because the continuity had run out. We'd squeezed all the juice out of that lemon. So I really remain to be convinced about it, but I kind of do have sympathy with the club and with Peter Lawwell, so far as I think there's the blame for a lot of things. The blame for everything the bad that happens at the club falls at Peter Lawwell's feet, but none of the blame for anything good, really, because you're not really allowed to give Peter Lawwell credit for good things. Now, there was a time, wasn't there, where Peter Lawwell was like, one of the first internet memes I ever heard of, I think, was when Peter Lawwell was called the sharp-suited man. Like, that was one of the first ever memes.
An old forum favourite, that, yeah.
Aye. There was a time where, like, everywhere he walked, people were laying palms at his feet, but now you fucking they don't want to see any of the guy, never darken our door again.
See what you said there about how Celtic could very well take the stance and the point of view that, look, it doesn't matter if the fans don't like him. He's there to do a job. He's there to take up a largely hands-off football-wise role, right? That should be the case. I've not really got an awful lot of interest in but he'll end up meddling eventually. He'll end up picking the team and all that, right? I've not really got a lot of interest in that just now, because that shouldn't happen, and
no,
it probably won't, right? But on the point that it doesn't matter. Look, we need this guy in. I don't care what the fans think. The thing is, that's true, right? That is largely true. They are there to run a business, to satisfy shareholders, all that stuff, all that boring stuff that Peter Lawwell is, on the face of things, ostensibly there to do, right? Just liaise between the board and shareholders, all that boring stuff that we shouldn't necessarily have to pay attention to on a podcast such as this. But Celtic aren't just some vast, faceless global conglomerate. They do have a passionate, emotive fan base at the heart of it, right? And at least an eye has to be on customer, as they would probably put it, / fan satisfaction as well. Look, I think they have to have some sort of idea of the depth of ill feeling that happened during that season. And I don't think it's a particularly compelling argument to just say, oh, well, we didn't win 10 in a row. He shouldn't be anywhere near the place. That is a little bit besides the point. It's part of it, but it's not like the main thing. But I think that this is the reason everyone is so upset about it, is because of the treatment of the fans and the arrogance shown during that season that we're now faced with having to talk about again. Not because we're moaning about it happened, it's because we're having it thrust back in our faces, that era.
Yeah.
Because
it was inevitable, wasn't it?
Yeah,
there was whispers about this for months.
Terribly
they could have announced it at the AGM, and they didn't bother because they knew exactly what you were saying about the ill feeling. Yeah. That's why they didn't mention it at the AGM. I
think one of the most disappointing, if not the most disappointing things from my point of view about this whole sorry affair with Peter Lawwell coming back is that we found out the hard way, very hard actually, what it's like, what happens, the consequences of holding on to the past far too long, right?
Yeah.
Holding on to players too long, holding on to a manager too long because you've done it in the past, holding on to a chief executive far too long. Like, he far outstayed the sort of average tenure of one of the guys in British football in his position, far outstayed it, right? So we held on to all of that too long, and with the cutting of the cord, the clean break we made from that era, everybody was gone. Dom Mackay came in, the Dom Mackay era came and went as well, right? But everybody associated with that, apart from Dermot Desmond, of course, you're never shifting him, but everybody associated with that was gone, right? Brand new players, brand new manager, brand new, Dom Mackay, the chief exec, right? Everything felt so new, so fresh, and still does.
Exciting.
Exactly, and still does to an extent to this day. We all felt like we were pulling in the same direction, the fans, the club, the manager, the players, everything, we're all going in this brave, fresh new direction. Don't get me wrong, there is always going to be a healthy mistrust and holding to accountability of the board, but between the fans and the board, and so there should be. That'll always exist. But by and large, we were all going in the same direction. So now to have that era just dumped back on top of us and just thrust back in our faces just feels very disappointing to me. I don't know what he's going to do.
Are you calling him the poo in the punch bowl? Is that what you're calling him? we were all having a party and somebody's shot the pool. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying about Peter Lawwell. It's grim stuff. I mean, again, this could all go very, very well, and he's just in the background. Nobody's paying attention. But the main problem is that can't happen with a name like Peter Lawwell. He can never be fully in the background because of what I said earlier about how the minute anything goes wrong, the minute a player leaves this club, it's going to be, Peter Lawwell's driven him out. There were already, see the day it was announced, there were already suggestions floating around on Twitter and on various WhatsApp groups I'm in about how that was the reason Juranovic's contract talks were stalled, is because Lawwell was back. I'm like, see, it started already. As daft as that is, it's already started. So I'm joking about it just now. I'm very, very disappointed. The question I would pose to Celtic, because we know they listen and all that, right? Could you have just appointed someone else as a chairman and kept all the good stuff I've just listed about how the fresh new direction, could you have kept that, or did it absolutely have to be Peter Lawwell?
Well, this is it.
And you've diluted it. Yeah, did it have to be this way?
There was it might have been Ange actually that said words to the effect that he's never really left. He's always been on the end of the phone for us because he's right, cool. Well, if he's happy to do that, or did Peter Lawwell did he strong arm them? He's like, look, you want me to keep answering this phone? You're going to have to give me that job. I can't be here forever. You know, people want my help here, there, and everywhere. Or is that how we ended up with it? It's not just Celtic that have reached into the past here to help them out. I don't know if you're a bit worried about this, Stephen, but I am shaking in my boots because Rangers have brought back winner of 55, going for 56, number 18. They've thrown as many numbers at it as you care to list, because we know they like listening. They brought back the man who washes his face with vegetable oil, Michael Beale. He's a greasy little man, isn't he? And
celebrity wee guy, isn't he? Celebrity scabby wee guy. He's
the great white hope for Rangers, and right away I can see he's made improvements, because I saw an interview last week with a journalist. Look, we've been at press conferences and these things are dull, and you struggle to ask questions, and sometimes you get asked to ask a question and they say, no, you're not asking that, ask something else. Sometimes you're sat there for 15 minutes and you've got 5 questions written down, and by the time they get to you, all 5 of your questions have been asked by other people, so you have to come up with something else. I don't think there was any danger of anyone stealing the "so are you going to make the players wear suits again" question. You're getting battered in the Champions League. You're getting pumped in the league. You've won one league in many of your fans' lifetimes. The fans are foaming at the mouth about ticket prices, shirt sales, no contracts for your star players. People are going out the door. You're not signing anyone. There's so much going wrong at that club. It's a car crash of a club they're falling out with Singe. They're falling out with Sports Direct. They're falling out with Hummel. They're falling out with, they don't let Chris Sutton do his job for BT. There's chaos reigning all over that club. And the thing that's going to save them is a suit. I'm like, honestly, keep it up, because that is the reason that you guys are winning. Fuck all, really, is because of that sort of attitude. And I was so pleased when I heard that, partly because I knew it would be good content for this podcast, but partly because I thought, never change. And of course, Michael Beale answered by going, yeah, there'll be a lot of changes around here, starting with the suits. He's not even got his brogues under the desk yet, and he's already ringing the changes.
It's the kind of thing we would joke about and never expect it to actually happen, that they would address the suits thing in an actual official press release or whatever, press conference or whatever it was. It's the kind of thing we would laugh at, and then we would say the words beyond parody, because it quite literally is. There's no joke we can make about it that's funnier than the truth, that they care so much about their grotty little suits being dusted off.
Well, that's what I think got Gio the sack, right? There was this pervasive sort of, he doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. You need an ex-player in there. And I thought, but he is an ex-player, so why does he not count? See, by any measure, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst is a better manager than Michael Beale. Michael Beale's managed a handful of games. He was an assistant. He got the job at QPR, swore his allegiance to them, says, I can't go anywhere. 3 weeks later, he's popping up at Ibrox. It's a very, very odd appointment. And I do have some Rangers supporting friends, and I can say, people on this podcast might not, but I can say, not one of them are enthused. Not one of them is doing cartwheels about it. And the guy doesn't worry me. And look, this will get clipped, but he doesn't worry me in the slightest.
No, I mean, you would struggle to drum up massive support for it. I think even the staunchiest of Bears out there would struggle to make a massive fanfare about Michael Beale. Mick Beale, rather. I prefer Mick.
No. Never will a Mick manage that club.
Jim Traynor stamped that out pretty quick, didn't he?
Aye. He was Mick Beale for about a week, wasn't he?
Aye.
I don't know if that was just someone. I mean, there was a lot of the Mick Beale patter, and then obviously when he actually signed on the dotted line, it became Michael. Soon it'll just be Mister.
I don't
the guys
even know
that phone up Clyde One, it'll be Mr. Beale.
I don't even know if Trainor's still involved with them, but I feel like he's their Peter Lawwell. He's always there somewhere. He's always in the background somewhere. But he stamped out the Mick stuff immediately.
He'll be their shortest 7 manager, I think. Was it Gio? Was it just about?
He was the third shortest.
Was he the third shortest? Michael Beale will be up there. He's not
Paul Gwen. I think Paul Gwen is the current record holder for any club named Rangers. But I think they would struggle to drum up a huge amount of enthusiasm for it because he's not got any history with management whatsoever.
Small hands.
small oily little hands. Small red little oily hands. But his standing in the game, look, I get that he's probably a good coach, right? He seems to have a decent reputation as a coach. He was billed as the genius behind the Gerrard winning 55 and all that stuff. He was billed as the mastermind behind that, right? So he's probably got a little bit of coaching.
He knows where the cons are kept.
He knows where the cons and the bibs are kept. Absolutely. So it does have that. You look at the recent history of that, and there's nothing really wrong with one of these clubs in Scotland appointing a so-called rookie manager, right? Because rookie managers have been successful in the past. Notably Steven Gerrard. Neil Lennon just came in and was successful straight away, just right off the bat of him previously just having been a coach, right? So it can happen. But you look at the recent history of Rangers managers, and Steven Gerrard might have been a rookie, but he was also one of the biggest names in British football this century, right? He was a massive name and a massive pull, regardless of his managerial experience. To get him in, you're thinking, well, that's a statement, right? To get a guy like that in, it didn't work out all that particularly well for him, but it was a big statement at the time. Then they brought in Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, something of a recent club legend, a league-winning manager in another country. All these qualifications that you would seek in a manager coming into your club, right? And then they've just gone and get this guy who was the assistant a couple of years ago and has managed 20 games, won 9 of them, and now he's the Rangers manager. I've struggled to muster up any fear for that. I mean,
they don't seem to have the infrastructure either, do they? Because all their signings have been crap recently. Their signings have been pretty crap recently. So,
well, see on the subject of asking questions of Rangers and all that, there's actually a pretty good video doing the rounds on social media just now of. It's a clip from one of probably their AGM or something like that. It's like Ross Wilson and Michael Beale and all that lined up along a table, and some fans giving them absolutely tight, by the way, like particularly Ross Wilson. He's rhyming off all these signings they've made and how terrible they've been. Why did you sign Suter when you knew he was going to be injured? He'd been injured, he'd missed 40 games or something like that over that, etc, etc. So they're definitely
seek that out for more enjoying.
The natives are revolting at the moment. But when it comes to them appointing Michael Beale, we're joking about it. He might be a competent coach, but as we stand just now, having never managed a game for Rangers so far, I feel like throwing him in against Ange Postecoglou, they have turned up to an arse-kicking competition with no legs and a massive arse. That's kind of how it feels like just now. In fact, have you ever seen those ridiculous clips online of those slapping competitions where two guys stand at a table and they slap each other? Or women, they do it as well, right? So how these often get clipped and memed is that one absolutely gives it full pelt and the other guy just stands there, just takes it in the chin and then winds up and knocks the other guy clean off his feet. That's how I see this managerial face-off.
This episode of 20 Minute Tims is sponsored by NordVPN. NordVPN offer you premium cybersecurity and up to 6 devices for the price of a cup of coffee per month. You can also change your virtual location for all your streaming services, and it protects your computer on public Wi-Fi, amongst many other benefits. I particularly use NordVPN when I'm wanting to shift up things and watch some different content on other streaming services, unnamed movie streaming services. You can switch up the content on that by changing your virtual location. So you can grab your exclusive NordVPN discount deal by going to nordvpn.com/Tims, and that'll get you a huge discount off of your NordVPN plan, plus 4 months for free. Moreover, it's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And that's nordvpn.com/Tims to get yourself a huge discount off of a Nord plan, plus an additional 4 months for free. It's never too early to play holiday music, and it's never too early to start thinking about gifts. Whether it's for a friend or the friend in your pants, you can make this season jolly with Manscaped. Do your little drummer boy a favour and use the Lawnmower 4.0 to avoid another silent night in the bedroom. Then add in Manscaped's top-of-the-line shower products that have the people thinking, all I want for Christmas is you. Santa cares about his sack. And so should you. Look nice when you get naughty by going to manscaped.com and use the code TIMS for free shipping and 20% off, Stephen.
That's right, Jamie. Now that you've groomed your candy cane, it's time to make sure you don't smell like a reindeer with the Platinum Package's shower products. All of Manscaped's shower gear is sulfate-free, vegan, and made to have your skin feeling hydrated and smelling fresh. But smelling good doesn't stop at the shower. The Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner, can solve stank problems all day long. Once they touch your sack, you'll never go back.
Wonderful. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code TIMS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code TIMS. Manscaped, get your jingle balls ready for the holidays. Aye, I'm no concerned at all. My Ick Beale is the walking it. He's a wee pipsqueak, and I think we'll deal with him quite easily. And to help us deal with Rangers, because we have got them in a couple of weeks. I thought Ange's response was pretty good. I'm more concerned about my dinner, about what's going on over at Rangers. He did caveat that by saying, unless we're playing them in a couple of weeks, unless they were playing them next, then I'd pay more attention, which is fine, because you don't want to completely write them off in case they do get a result against you.
He caveated it further by saying, but I quite like my dinners as well. Ange, I'm right into my dinners.
Is that what he said? I am.
No, I didn't actually. You can imagine, just got that. Look, he should have just gone further and said, look, I care so little about these questions and care so much about my dinner. I've been thinking about my dinner for every single one of these questions.
He does give that vibe when he's starting to the press conference. Just care less what they're saying. We are bringing in reinforcements here. So,
I know, exciting
there's
stuff.
a couple of things to talk about. There's a couple of things that's kind of annoying me a wee bit, right? So, first up, we're bringing in Canadian right back, or plays on the right side of the fence as the back three as well, is Alistair Johnston. Now, we have got Euro expert Alex scouting these players. He will have a podcast with us very soon, but he did text me yesterday because he's been watching Alistair Johnston. Johnston, fwaffed, is what he said.
Really?
Now, yes. He's obviously quite impressed by Alistair Johnston. Did you see much of him during the World Cup?
Yeah, I did. I watched Canada's games, in particular, not the first one, but particularly the second one, because do you remember the rumours started circulating that he was about to sign for Celtic basically the night before they played their second game, I think it was, maybe against Belgium. And I paid attention to that from then on, because then they played against Croatia, and the obvious narrative around that was the battle of the right backs, because Juranovic was on the other side. So yes, I paid attention to those. What I would say, though, is I can't really take anything away from his World Cup performances. He was all right. It was decent enough. But him playing as the right-sided centre-half in a back three for a team like Canada, who I really enjoyed watching. I thought they were quite unlucky, but it doesn't change the fact that, with all due respect to them, they are a World Cup minnow, right? They've barely qualified for the tournament in the past, and they were rank underdogs for all of these games that they played. I don't think watching him in those circumstances against much better teams, I don't think any of that is transferable information to what he's going to be expected to do at Celtic. He hasn't been signed off the back of being up against it in the World Cup. No. It's going to be on his club form for Montreal. So while I enjoyed the opportunity to see him in advance, I'm not taking anything away from it whatsoever, because playing for Canada at a World Cup is very, very different to playing for a team like Celtic in domestic competition. It's very different indeed.
So I think we can all accept now that probably means Juranovic is for the off. I don't really foresee a situation where we have three first choice right backs at the club, and I'm kind of pissed off about that a wee bit, because look, I know that Ange said we need to prepare for players leaving and all that, but I'm looking at, when he said that, I thought he meant the Matt O'Reillys of the squad, right, the Jotas of the squad, the Carter Vickers of the squad, the sort of high value players that you would think to yourself, right, we're going to get an offer we can't refuse for him, and he's going to get wages that we can't possibly match. I think Juranovic is a good player, excellent for his last season, good this season. I don't think that quality of player and that type of player and that profile of player is one that we should kind of be struggling to hold on to. And it kind of seems like we are, because the discussions about selling him are already afoot. We've bought in the replacement, and he's only, a year and a bit into 18 months or so into a 5-year deal. It's just... and we'll talk about Yakimakis as well. The jungle drums are beating about him wanting to go. I'm like, I just think it makes it very difficult to build things. You know, if we lose Giakoumakis and we lose Juranovic, and then we move into the summer and we lose Matt O'Reilly, which is rumoured as well, and Joe Hart moves on.
Yeah.
That's 4 first-team players, really, that we've lost. That is 4 players who won't be starting the next Champions League match that did start for us in the Champions League the season before. And that's not even taking into account you might get 1 or 2 surprising bids. You know, you might get a bid for Carter Vickers after he's been at the World Cup and his profile's increased. He'll no doubt be on his agent saying, you know, maximise this for me. Jota. It's just... I'm quite surprised at the sort of resignation of the fact that we just seem to be losing to sort of mid-tier, not mid-tier, but sort of, how did we rank them? Remember we did the squad review for Patreon pre-season?
Yeah, we did.
Those 2 guys were sort of in our second, weren't they? They were the second tier. They weren't top tier, but they were second tier for us. So I'm quite pissed off. I think we should, I don't know, I expect a wee bit more loyalty. I know people will say that Juranovic, he only spent a season at Legia Warsaw, and then he came to us, and then he's basically spent a season and a half, and he's moved on. But I would want to see a bit more loyalty from him. If Alistair Johnston comes in and he's a good player and he takes Juranovic's place quite easily, then obviously I'm not going to be crying over spilt milk. I'm not going to be wishing that we'd swapped, you know, one equally talented player for another. But I'm just quite surprised, particularly by Juranovic and Giakoumakis, that these guys are already making moves about wanting out of the club.
Well, a few things there. I think your final point there about hoping that Alistair Johnston replaces, if not usurps, Juranovic, or is an improvement on Juranovic. I think we need to place our faith in that. It's very early days for this new strategy that Ange seems to be warming the fans up for when he's talking about greater activity in the transfer market. With that comes great risk, though, because the more players you sign, the more chance you have of those players not working out, just based on the history of Celtic signings. But with changing the strategy, all we can do as fans is hope that that's going to change. More due diligence, the better recruitment is going to be done, and it's not going to be just a case of plucking 1 to 1.3 million pound signings from all over Europe, throwing them in and hoping they do okay, because we've done a lot of that churn recently. So what we're hoping we can do is take in a guy like Juranovic, flip him over the course of 18 months to 2 years, bring in a younger, hopefully better player, so that we can basically do the same again. Now, this is what Ange meant when he said, like, it's going to be tough for you guys because you want to follow your heroes, you want to buy into players, and this genuinely isn't a criticism, but you're taking it personally already. Like you're sitting there going, like, what's this all about, basically? Or you kind of want us to not lose these guys.
It's more it's not so much, but it's not the club pushing this.
No,
that's kind of my where I think my beef is a wee bit. It's not the club going, right, well, I don't expect, for talking sake, the noises that are coming out of both units, because he wanted to move in the summer as well, and Giakoumakis. It's not Celtic are like, right, these guys are primed, they're hot, let's try and find them a move. It's the players going, it's Juranovic going, I want out of here after one season, and it's Giakoumakis going, I want more money than you're prepared to offer me. If you can't pay me, I'm going to look for a move. And we went, okay, guys, go forth and try and find a move. So it's that's what's annoyed me a wee bit. You know, these are supplementary to the players who I thought would want to leave in the summer. I kind of like, do you think you are? You know, like you're sitting in your office. Hold on, I expected Matt O'Reilly to be bashing down my door looking for a move, but you, Giakoumakis, you don't even start every week.
Yeah, actually, I totally understand where you're coming from with this. The ways in which I'm choosing to look at it positively is that, see these 2 guys at hand at the moment, right? These 2 particular cases, they're both 28 years old and are probably at their peak value. And I think that's probably what's prompting the... I don't know if Celtic... The reason these stories come out is that it's been framed that Celtic are entering into like contract negotiations. Me personally, I can't think of any reason to extend these guys' contracts that they've only been here 18 months and they've like 4 or 5 year contracts. I can't think of any reason to extend, because at the end of their current contracts, they're going to be 32 or whatever at the end. So at that point, there's no sense to me in extending just now. What you do is you wait until they get to 31 and extend by 2 years or whatever. Unless we're now got to the point where what we do is we sign these players on long-term deals, and it's happening all the time now because Haksabanović's got a 5-year deal, Jota,
GG's
all
got
these
a
guys
5-year deal.
Yeah, they're all signing long-term contracts. So maybe we're taking a sort of office appraisal approach to this, if that makes any sense. After 18 months, we're sitting down and saying, look, where do you see yourself? Do you want to leave the club at the end of this season, or do you want to extend? Maybe it's just a sort of feeling out operation we're doing just now. Those two guys have intimated that they might be up for leaving, so Celtic are just like, well, we may as well cash in now that they're at their kind of peak value. That might be the case, or it might be these guys have gone in a huff and they're demanding to leave. I don't think it's the latter, quite frankly. But I think with Giakoumakis, he was always a quite unusual case, because I think, very, very roughly looking into the stats and all that, I think he scored something like 60% of his career goals total in the last 2 and a bit seasons. So he probably feels like, right, well, things are happening for me now after a long, long career of doing absolutely nothing. It's a really weird career he's had. So maybe this is the last opportunity I've got to go and play in, I don't know, Germany or where he sees himself playing. To me, I do totally agree, or I understand where you're coming from, but to me, there's probably more nuance to it than just the guys have chucked it and they want to leave, or they're lacking loyalty.
One of the players we've been linked with to replace Giakoumakis is Cho Gu-sung, who's South Korean. He's at the World Cup, isn't he?
He is, and boy, is he at the World Cup. Have you seen the thing where he's been in the news? Because I think he got a double. He's had a lot of attention because he got a brace against Ghana, I think it was, quite early on, or in the group stage. And his Instagram followers went from about 20,000 before the tournament. For context, that's fewer followers than we have on Twitter, right? So he had about 20,000 before the tournament kicked off, and he has since gone up to 2.2 million, reportedly, right? So 2.2 million followers. And it's nothing to do with him having scored a couple of goals against Ghana, and everything to do with the fact there was just a video of him, I think, sitting on the bench, looking handsome as shit. And now everyone's mad for him, basically calling him the sexiest player at the World Cup. And he has been inundated with marriage proposals and all that, to the point where he's basically had to just bin his phone so he can get on with his job at the World Cup. So quite the star we've got buzzing in there.
I just Googled him as you were talking there. You're right, the World Cup's sexiest footballer. Cho's Instagram has ballooned from 20,000 before the World Cup to more than 2.1 million. At the time of recording, it's 2.5 million. So another 400,000 people have joined the guy's Instagram. Obviously, good looks aside, we will be scouting him properly if he does end up joining Celtic.
Oh, before we move away from Cho altogether, this has got Peter Lawwell's fingerprints all over it. He's tapping into that South Korean market with the 2.5 million Instagram followers.
So will we be. Those South Korean, those K-pop fans are mental. If that's the sort of idol worship that he's getting, I would actually go for some of that. Could try and co-opt it. We'll have to put his face on all our YouTube thumbnails. Yeah. Get it translated into Korean, do the whole thing.
Well, have you seen the price of heating these days? Do you think that driveway heats itself? Peter Lawwell's get the right idea.
We're also after Afsha, who is the rebranded Mohamed Magdi.
Aye, from a couple of seasons ago, we were linked with him before. We've been
linked with him twice. So again, the Cho one is the rumour that's sort of gathering more speed. I saw today his dad was speaking about saying, yeah, I'm basically telling my son to look for a move, and I'm basically telling him that find a club that plays into your style of play, one that suits you and one that will help you settle, and don't just go for the biggest name in Europe. So it'd be interesting to see, because it's very unusual, isn't it, Celtic doing the transfer business this early? You know, that's one thing that changed with Peter Lawwell getting out the door. We were always told for so long, it's difficult. January's a difficult month. We're doing mad business in January.
Oh, yeah.
We do lots of business in January. We've done business this January. We did business last January. So that was a lawlism that's obviously came not to be true, because that was it, Stephen. It was very, very often, January's a difficult month. We always try to be stronger and going out of the window than we blah, 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 blah. Whereas Michael Nicholson and Ange are just like, sign him. Anybody else?
I think a lot of it is down to being able to now sign players from kind of far-flung markets that we'd never previously dipped into. So Japan, South Korea, Canada and all that. So almost every other aspect of life is absolutely on its arse because of Brexit. But every cloud. We're getting some international players in.
Is that a Brexit benefit, is it?
I suppose it is. I'd love to, hey, you can choose between, you can have a fishing industry or you can have Kyogo Furuhashi. What's it to be? I'd love to see the fishing industry score a couple of goals while injured in a cup final. Case closed.
there we go. Speaking of cases, do you want to talk about this alleged match fixing thing involving allegedly Griffiths whilst he was allegedly at Dundee? Or do you just want to appreciate that we don't have the financial backing to employ the Scotland's best lawyers and leave that dead alone?
Oh, well, probably that one, yeah. But imagine my shock when I saw that potential alleged headline as well. Imagine my surprise, because it's always the ones you least suspect, isn't it?
So allegedly what happened was in a game of alleged football against Hearts and alleged Dundee United, lots of allegedly bets were placed, and allegedly people won hundreds of thousands of pounds on Lee Griffiths getting yellow carded, which did happen in the game. That is a fact, and I believe Paul McGowan allegedly got yellow carded for it as well. And I thought to myself, that is just unbelievable. I could never see something like that happen in football in Scotland. I could never see something like that happen, particularly at Dundee, with the calibre of professional they've got there. And apropos of nothing at all, I do remember a couple of incidents in Dundee games. I'm saying these are completely unrelated. Do you remember that wild dive that Charlie Adam took right in front of the referee? The worst dive you've ever seen.
Sure do.
I think he got booked for that.
I actually heard it referred to, I think it was on the Football Ramble, they said, like, at what point, given a player's physical condition, do you stop calling it diving and you actually say, like, he's had a fall?
Yeah.
He's had a tumble.
I was just completely apropos of nothing, I was reminded of that. Then I was also reminded of, again, completely unrelated to the previous topic, I think that ball Charlie Adam, experienced 30-odd-year-old footballer, midfielder, Charlie Adam, mind that time he just turned and played a ball square across his own goal and somebody from the opposition team just tapped it in and scored? Mad that, wasn't it? Anyway, I'm not saying these things are I'm definitely not saying these things are related. I have no knowledge of the incidents, but I'm just saying
it's
when
clearly,
you start talking about weird things that happened, those
clearly unrelated. I think you've been very clear about how they're all unrelated. And guess what? The last several minutes of this podcast might just be sort of incidental music by the time it comes out, once we've consulted the 20-Minute Tim's legal team. But to track us back to the football, to the transfer, exciting transfer matters, as I've been talking here, and I know I've been trying to kind of play devil's or dick advocate, as we like to say on this podcast, the thing is that Juranovic feels like a very different case to Giakoumakis, because Giakoumakis has very strong cult hero flavour with the Celtic fans, right? Massively, right? So he sums it all up. I think you would move on from Juranovic very quickly if you just replace him with an adequate and competent, really good right back, right? I think you would move on from him, forget him really quickly. That's maybe not the case with Giakoumakis, because he's got a big fans' favourite, vibe around him. However, what I would say is we just need to place our faith once again in it. This guy's 28, maybe prime value at the moment. Maybe it's time to move him on, finally take advantage of the fact that we've got sellable assets at the club and we want to reinvest back into what Ange Postecoglou believes he can take us to. Reinvest it, get another player in. But I suppose if Cho comes in, if that transfer is likely to happen, if he comes in and starts scoring goals, we will probably forget about him pretty quickly. That's what it's all about at the end of the day.
We are fickle. We're still football fans at the end of the day. We are fickle about it. Did you see the clip of Juranovic consoling Daisameda as they went out of the World Cup?
Heartbreaking. Absolutely miserable. It really was. I was gutted for Maeda. I'd much preferred to have seen Japan go through, just because they're a much more likeable team. Definitely. They're a much more likeable team than Croatia. Though, Croatia have had their moment as well. Yeah,
but also though, part of me saw the penalties they hit and thought, you fucking did nothing.
Exactly.
These are fucking awful. What are you doing? So, that angered me, because I was rooting for Japan and I thought, right, you can do it here. Come on, show us what you can do. Croatia kind of aging. There's been a few upsets in this World Cup, right enough. And, as we record this, it's just came out that Morocco have knocked out Spain. Yeah, so there's a few upsets, and I thought we might get another one there.
Japan were hitting their penalties really, really badly. I was sitting there thinking, I see, you thought you could do without Hatate, eh? Sitting out there all smug.
Yeah.
And then I remembered his penalty against Everton in that friendly we played recently. That was a shocker as well.
Has Kyogo hit a penalty for us yet?
Can't think of
Doesn't
any.
take them, does he?
Nah, I can't think
He's
of
off
any.
pens. It's Jura, and then it's Yakimakis. Maybe there's something in this. Maybe the Japanese just don't. Remember, England went through a thing where England were rotten at penalties for decades. Maybe Japan are going through that same thing. And then I think Juranovic may now be. I was trying to figure this out. Went furthest in the World Cup as a Celtic player, so he's in the quarters.
Right. Oh, let us know. Let us know in the comments of that. Actually, if there's any advance on a current Celtic player. So while he's at Celtic, going far, you're really only looking at, of course, Juninho was World Cup winner before he signed for Celtic. Edson Braffied
was runner-up before Braffied had left Celtic technically by the time he appeared at the World Cup final.
Pat Bonner, maybe. Pat Bonner got to, was that the last 16 or the last 8, maybe with Ireland? I need to look back into that, but let us know. Let us know if there's any advance on that.
But as the World Cup comes to a close, it means that Celtic will be back soon. And I mean, it's been a long time. I feel like Celtic have not played in ages. I know the guys that aren't in the World Cup at the moment and those who have returned from the World Cup, but after getting a wee bit of rest, we're having a warm weather training camp in Portugal. We're playing Rennes behind closed doors. Neil Lennon conquered them, so some big shoes to fill for Ange.
Hi, Celtic versus Rennes, the clash that conjures up quite a lot of memorable imagery for me, because from memory, in that game you mentioned against them in 2019, that was when Vakun Bayo gets sent off about 6 minutes after coming on as a sub, but for doing Edouard Mendy, who went on to play for Chelsea. So he gets sent off, became known as the biohazard from that moment onwards. He's never looked back. And of course, the most historic moment in a Celtic versus Rennes game was when Chaduri calmly slotted it past Fraser Forster from about 25 yards and then pissed himself laughing after scoring the comical own goal. One of the greatest of all time own goals. That's
when we all gave up on Cha. At that time, that's when I think we collectively gave up on Chaduri.
Oh, God,
but it's good to see Celtic putting the work in with Rangers. I don't know if they're doing anything. I think they're just training at Murray Park, but they were. I saw Morelos and all that were in Dubai on their holiday, so it's good to see that Ange is keeping things ticking over at Celtic, and that's what champions do. And that's what we've been doing. We've been keeping the podcasts ticking over.
That's right.
The Patreon stuff doesn't stop either. We don't stop recording over on patreon.com/20minutetim. So get involved if you want some extra content from us. For those of you who like to watch us on YouTube, we will be back next week with a full live and in colour version on YouTube/20minuteTims if you want to check that out. But if you just listen, thank you so much to everyone who supports us on Patreon. Thanks to everyone who rates us on iTunes and rates us on Spotify and retweets the podcast when it comes out.
Keep it up.
We really appreciate all that stuff. But most of all, just thank you so much for listening.